of 2 meetings specifically focused on equity and the policy plan. Hi, Elaine. It's Leah and myself, Michelle, are the staff people in the call at the moment. We're going to be recording this meeting today, and so while I'm doing the presentation, we won't be able to monitor the chat necessarily, but we're a small group here, and so I think we can have a discussion when we come to it. We're going to record the meeting, and it'll be posted. And this meeting, there's 2 of these meetings. They're exactly the same. Our intention is to present one during the day and another one at night later this month. And so it'll be the same presentation twice over. So thank you for joining us today. We're going to dive in a little bit more to equity. If you were able to attend one of the kickoff outreach meetings, we had just a board and some discussions with people individually. We just had a board propped up to talk on a very general scale about equity. Today, our intention is to dive in just a little bit deeper and let you know where we are in the process. You can go ahead, Leah, to the next slide.
Thanks. So I'm just going to quickly go over the agenda. We're just going to talk about project overview, the purpose of the comprehensive plan, give a brief, update of the timeline, and then kind of jump into our equity discussion of what it's going to look like in the policy plan, and then go ahead and open it up to questions and discussions. This is kind of just a project overview. Pretty much on December 6, 2022, the Board of Supervisors authorized the consideration of a comprehensive plan amendment to update the countywide policy plan. So this looked at 3 different aspects. One is review and update and streamline existing policy plan elements. The second was to add new policy plan elements as needed, such as the equity section. And then the third was to ensure the policy plan is in alignment with the countywide strategic plan, the One Fairfax policy, and other recently adopted policies and initiatives, which we're going to go over more in depth in our discussion today. And so the countywide policy plan consists of the following elements that you can see that's listed in phase 1 and phase 2. But we're going to be looking at phase 1. Within phase 1, which is what we're currently looking at, is going to be the preface, land use, transportation, environment, parks and rec, equity, community health and human services. So those are what we're looking at in the phase 1, and then phase 2 will happen later. And so just to kind of give, start providing kind of a brief overview on the differences between the comp plan and the other county regulatory documents, kind of in order just to help frame the work of this amendment and the future recommendations. So the comprehensive plan is a guide that sets the land use vision for the county, and it's implemented through the development review process through zoning applications. And then the policy plan includes goals, objectives, and policies. The goals provide the general direction of the plan, and then the objectives include statements to help achieve those goals. And then finally, the policies that are include specific approaches for pursuing an objective. And so the policy plan really applies to countywide. So therefore, it's important to ensure that the policies developed are general and flexible enough to apply across the county, but also targeted enough to address the topic that we're working to improve. And then jumping to the area plan volumes that are within the comprehensive plan, those provide specific guidance and recommendations pertaining to development within the areas of the county in order to ensure that development is addressing area and site-specific considerations. And then jumping to the zoning ordinance, this is a regulatory document that applies to all structures, and it's intended to promote the health, safety, and general welfare of the public, and to also implement the comprehensive plan. And then finally, the public facilities manual provides the specific engineering guidelines for the development and construction of new developments. And then this is just a high overview of kind of the project timeline. Since the board authorized this, we've done a lot of community engagement. We've gone to the board and PC kind of land use planning committee meetings. And so, right now we're kind of focused on having these focused topic outreach to the community. And as you can see, we're kind of just going to continue doing community outreach, with each phase that we're in. Um, and then we're aiming to kind of, have something, have, recommendations and everything to the policy plan updates in fall of 2025.
And so in terms of thinking about incorporating equity into the policy plan, we continually remind ourselves and ground ourselves in some of the principles and the policies that the county has set up for itself. So obviously one of our guiding document here at the county is the One Fairfax policy, which commits us to considering equity in the creation and implementation of county policy. And equitable community development in the county means Fairfax County is a place where all people live in communities of opportunity with the ability to engage fully in decisions that affect their lives and neighborhoods. And we're going to talk a little bit more specifically about opportunity in the county and how we're um, using that as a framework to start to think about the policy plan. You can go ahead, Leah, to the next. Thanks. Another guiding document on a regional level is the COG Equitable Development Principles. COG is the Council of Government. It's a regional body that adopted equitable development principles for the region and includes Fairfax County, Arlington, Montgomery County, some of the smaller municipality jurisdictions in the region. And these are the high-level principles that COG adopted related to equitable development. And so you'll see that some of the different principles apply to different arenas of work related to land use. There's housing, there's displacement, there's economic considerations, health and safety, environmental justice, transportation. Including some process principles related to community engagement and acknowledging history and repairing past harms. And so we use that also as we're thinking about the policy plan. You can go to, yeah, thanks. So specifically, we are grounding ourselves in the strategic plan when we're thinking about putting equity in the policy plan, and specifically these principles related to promoting access to opportunity within the county. And so the components, this is a clip straight from the Fairfax County Strategic Plan. The 4 principles related to access to opportunity is understanding and using data to understand the county and our vulnerability, and then developing interventions to build opportunity and to connect opportunity. Thanks, Elaine. We'll get to that in just a second. Targeting intervention to connect opportunity, and then encouraging development of an inclusive economy. And so I just wanted to point out on the left, this is an example of a tool that the county has developed. It's called the Communities of Opportunity Dashboard. And this is an example of data that the county has developed, the One Fairfax office has developed to help us understand a little bit more about our region, and uses some data points to begin to give us a high-level look at certain areas of the county and to be able to understand different aspects of data and analytics related to particular areas. So some of the data related to this, not all of it is specifically land use related, but much of it is. For example, access to transit would be a data point that's included in the Communities of Opportunity dashboard that's from the One Fairfax County. And so this is an example of some data that we would like to mobilize and use more as part of the policy plan and in our work as part of operationalizing the access to opportunity and understanding opportunity in the county. So we just wanted to talk and give a couple of examples today of some of how we're thinking about land use policy and equity. And we're in the beginning of stages. We haven't, for example, written any policy yet. We're using these examples of guidance, and we're using those to inform some writing we're doing just related to white papers, which I'll talk about in a second, to develop some ideas that will then result in policy. And so we hope to work with all of you and several other groups that we've been talking to into moving this forward, to incorporating equity into the different elements of the policy plan. The policy plan is made up of several elements, as Leah was highlighting earlier. We're working on land use, environment, transportation, parks, and community health at the moment. I think that's everything. And so our approach to equity is incorporating equity into each of those elements. So an example with the land use policy, some of the guidance that we're using, for example, from the strategic plan, there's a strategy in the strategic plan that calls for using data disaggregated by population of place to promote and encourage land development, so that investment in communities connects people to opportunity and mitigates residential and commercial displacement. So something we're talking about and working on a white paper related to is that residential and commercial displacement. And so we don't have policies at this point clearly defined to put in the policy plan yet, but this is some of the guidance that we're using in our work, specifically related to land use. This is not exclusive. There's a whole other outreach meeting specifically on land use, where they'll go into a little bit more detail. You can go to the next one, Leah. Here's some examples related to transportation. We've had a lot of conversations with the transportation group about what equity means for transportation, and here are a few of the strategic plan guidance examples for transportation. And so you can see everything is very closely tied together. The way our policy plan is set up, we have specific elements, like we'll have a transportation element, we have a land use element, and we're expecting to have a community health element. But that does not mean, they're certainly all tied together, and they cross over quite a bit. And so you'll see in the strategic plan, there's a healthy communities outcome area in the Fairfax County strategic plan. And so one of the strategies in the strategic plan is integrate considerations of health, well-being, and equity into the development and implementation and evaluation of land use, transportation, and housing policies and ordinances. There's several examples in the strategic plan with guidance related to transportation. We just pulled out a couple of them here. And looking at these gives us some direction with how to start to approach in putting equity into the policy plan. And the idea is, as we outlined a little bit earlier with the access to opportunity, is to use the data that we have at the county to begin to figure out how we can direct resources and direct some of our policy to focus on vulnerable communities. And just our last example, just our last example is related to equity in parks, as the Parks Department has created their Parks, Recreation, and Open Space Access strategy called PROSA. And part of the PROSA strategy that they've done in parallel with the strategic plan, but the PROSA strategy uses an equity lens and looking at parks, access to parks, location of parks, et cetera, et cetera. And so these are a couple of examples of from the PROSA strategy of how they're incorporating equity into their work. And in turn, the PROSA strategy and some of these approaches will be incorporated into the policy plan moving forward. And so they've developed their own index that takes into account many factors related to parks. And they've taken those into account and are starting to figure out how to implement some of these priorities. That in turn will, some of the things that are related to the policy plan will work themselves into the policy plan. Again, the individual topic meetings on these different topics will dig into a little bit deeper to those. But with equity, we're a little bit different than the other policy plan sections, is that we span all of the policy plan. And so we're working with each of the different groups to begin to understand and try to understand what access to opportunity means for all the different elements of the plan. And so um, um, we just have a short presentation today. And so we um, would love for those of you who are here to have further discussion about this or questions. Elaine, I think it was Elaine, we're working on the white paper right now, and the goal is by the end of the year for the white papers. We're not the only ones. All of the topic-specific areas are developing their own white papers. For example, environment is really working on getting a handle on stormwater, I believe. And so our white papers specifically for equity, the topic is equitable development, what that means and what that means in Fairfax County, and then also displacement, what that looks like in terms of land use and the policy plan. Here's a list of Lee and I are a topic specific lead with related to the um, we are topic specific leads related to equity specifically. There's a larger effort um, that is led by other members of our team coordinating all the community outreach related to very topic specific meetings. And so this is just the list of upcoming meetings that are topic based just in the month of October. I've included a link here at the end of on the slide to all of the upcoming meetings. They're on our website. There's meetings also in upcoming in November also, I believe. And the introduction meeting, thank you, Elaine. If you spend your time looking at the existing policy plan, there's an introductory section, and the introductory section of the policy plan is really an introduction to the entire comp plan. And so it does a few things. It lays out a land use vision for the county. It'll talk about the strategic plan. The existing one refers to the strategic plan from, I think it was 1987 or 84 or something. And so that will be updated to reflect the current strategic plan. And it has some history of the policy plan and how it was developed, how it has developed over time. And we'll be including some discussion about equity also in the introduction as part of the framework for the entire policy plan. And so it's it seems a little funny, I think, maybe just to have a topic-specific meeting on the introduction, but I think it's important because it does the introduction currently talks about the land use vision for the county. So it would be, I think, an interesting meeting to attend if you have the opportunity. So so these are the upcoming meetings. The meetings are intended, this one is during the day, we'll have another one at night. Lee and I will actually be providing some equity slides and probably attending many of the other topic meetings specifically. It's not necessarily vice versa, not all of the other topics are attending our meeting. But we'll be attending theirs, or at least giving them information to talk about equity in their specific topic. And so these are just the meetings that are coming up in October specifically. This is all of the contact information. The website has all the links to all of the meetings that are coming up, the current policy plan. If you have general comments about things you would like to talk about related to the policy plan or comments, just generally speaking, there's our just kind of our central email that goes to the project manager for the policy plan. If you'd like to talk to Leah and I about equity and the policy plan, our emails are here. And it's really the best way to reach us initially, either way. And so we are happy to talk and continue the conversation. We don't have everything fully formed yet, but we're certainly collecting information. We've heard a lot already from the outreach we've done related to, especially people are especially interested in displacement. And so we've been talking about that a lot, and then just how to make equity a consideration in the policy plan. highlight environmental justice. I think actually, Kathy, thank you for putting that definition in. Environmental justice, Kathy put in the definition, I think it was Kathy, the idea that all people should have the right to live in healthy communities free of harmful environmental conditions, regardless of their race, disability status, age, or socioeconomic background. And so, you know, a lot of the premise of the One Fairfax policy in the county is that people should have access to opportunity, and access to opportunity includes, for example, clean air, clean water, you know, shade where you need it. Um, um, Climate resilience is kind of a big term, but it's related to environmental justice. And so, you know, we have data in the county and reports in the county that talk about the unequal outcomes across the county, that when you disaggregate that information by place and race, you can see that some parts of our county are more well off than others. And you can disaggregate that data and get down to what parts of the county do have access to resources, and opportunity, which includes things like environment. Thanks, Kathy. Leah, do you want to just go to the maybe not even, maybe we can just take their presentation down, I think, and then we don't need to have the presentation up. Um, um, so if anyone, you know, I had muted someone who's on the telephone. I just want to make sure that person is, oh, can I unmute them?
I think they're gonna have to press star. Oh, I forgot what it was.
Can you Google that real quick? I can't, I'm sorry. The external person who called in, I'm sorry, I muted you when you called in, and then I'm sorry, I didn't recognize that I can't unmute you, that you have to do it. And is it *7?
Let's see. Hmm.
While Leah's figuring that out, if anyone else has any questions or comments that you'd like to talk about. Thank you,
Yeah,
Mary. *6. Thank you, Mary. It's, you got it. Thank you. Hi.
All right, guys. It's
Hi,
Mary
Mary.
Caden calling in.
Oh, okay.
Sorry about that, Mary.
Yeah, one thing I would ask is you know, Carla, our friend Carla, summarized One Fairfax kind of to say it's kind of looking at a program to see who is harmed or burdened and who is having an advantage from the program, and who is at the table. And I'm wondering if this equity process will look at who's at the table in these different land use and transportation decisions, et cetera, and specifically whether renters should have an equal say in these kind of things and in development of areas even right next door to their own homes. Right now they don't, and the board has agreed to have that happen, but apparently it's not on the work plan of zoning until 2026. And I don't know why that is exactly, but it seems like that should be part of the equity plan, is that people should be allowed to be at the table regardless of their how they have, whether they own housing or rent housing.
Thanks, Mary.
So I'm just wondering if you're going to address that.
You know, part of what we're talking about here. Yeah, Mary, I understand the context of what you're talking about, and you know, I'm not going to talk about the public processes that exist right now. I can tell you that, you know, for example, the COG Equitable Development Principles talks about inclusive community engagement, right? As does the one Fairfax County, and so you know, the discussion about that and how to operationalize that, I think certainly should be part of this conversation. Whether it's something that's in the policy plan or if it's part of an implementation, you know, often comprehensive plans come off sometimes with like an implementation plan, and which is where something like that would fall. And so um, I think, you know, we'll continue to talk about that. I think moving forward, it's um, I know something that has been coming up more and more, and especially recently. I think, you know, there's a lot of nuance between, you know, in PD where we send notices versus some of the other divisions and other departments, et cetera. And we don't need to. That's not part of our discussion today. But I appreciate you talking about it. We'll continue to talk about it, Mary, because you know, I agree. Of
Yeah,
course.
I
And
think it
so,
needs to be in a very high policy level place. I mean, we may need to change the state law, but I think we can do it at the county level, you know, perhaps by just saying, you know, you have an equal right to
mhm,
involvement and notification regardless of how you pay for your housing. Like they did with the vouchers at the state level,
mhm,
they made that into actually a fundamental civil right.
mhm,
Um, and I don't know if you have to go that far, but I think it needs to be at a high level, saying policy level, saying, you know, you have a right to participate and be notified of things,
mhm,
regardless of your ownership or how you
mhm.
pay for your living accommodations.
Thank you,
Anyway,
Mary.
that's
I appreciate it.
okay.
Uh, thank you. Um, does anyone else have some thoughts just right off the bat or questions for us? Um,
I just have one
yeah.
follow-up with Mary's comment.
Okay.
Thank you for coming to the Ventures and Community meeting, by the way. I'm one of the co-facilitators that just rolled off, Kathy Hozick, so that's the Kathy that's in the box.
Oh, okay.
But
Thanks.
yeah,
Thanks,
hi
Kathy.
Mary. I just wanted to say that I'm a member of the Mount Vernon Council of Citizens Association, and you have to be a homeowner to be in that group. So to Mary's point, even if you were a renter and you were notified that these kind of meetings were happening and you wanted to give input, there's no like organized effort. Like I don't know how they can unite really. So that's just something to think about. But my question is, like, I saw the picture in your slides of the Wish Center and with the one where you pulled out parks and equity. And I know that they're working on, because I'm Mount Vernon specific, even though
Yeah.
this meeting isn't.
Yeah.
I know they're working on updating the Mount Vernon Woods Park, which is amazing, to a skate park. So that's the kind of environmental justice that I'm thinking about. And the fact that, you know, a lot of the communities over here are not, they're walkable, but they may have sidewalks, but they're not lit sidewalks, like, you know, those kind of things. And to me, the equity of that is what I agree with Mary. I think we need to talk about that, because if I go to a meeting, I'm not going to say I want a lit sidewalk. I already have that. But that could be like a basic need for somebody who's not at the table saying that. And I know you guys are thinking about those things, but to hear it firsthand, like I have to walk 10 blocks from a bus stop in the dark at 10 p.m. Like
Mhm.
that's important, right? So
Yeah.
that's, and how can we, as people who don't live in those communities, help you guys get those communities engaged and involved
Mhm.
to give you guys feedback? Like
Yeah.
that's my real question.
Yeah. You know, Kathy, like I just want to give you an example here at the county, at least with some planning efforts that are currently going on and how we're trying to incorporate information like that. So we have a Centerville study that is going on right now that's led by a couple of our fellow planners, and actually that exact issue came up. during their process. And that issue came up during their process because of a very intentional effort by the planners to get out and talk with multiple levels of translators to people. We know from the data, we know on a high level from the data that we had that there were certain parts of that area where people didn't have cars, right? Or maybe the sidewalks were incomplete. And so at a high level, we had that sort of data. And so our planners dug in a little bit more and during their outreach process have been able to connect with much of that community. And that has come up, quite frankly, as an issue, like lighting along a sidewalk or lack of a sidewalk between really an area where their resources are versus where a lot of people are living. And so, at a policy plan level, and a staff level related to education, but at a policy plan level, incorporating language that is intentional about, using data and also, and when I say data, I don't mean just numbers data, right? Quantitative and qualitative, right? Talking to people to figure out where resources should be headed. And so that's just a way to say, I agree. Number one, it's something at least at an area planning level that our planners are trying to dig into more recently. And then your question was specifically how to get more people involved with, at that level of need. And so, it's never easy, and I can tell you that process is evolving over time. But I think it's certainly should be part of this conversation that we're having related to the policy plan. I mean, outreach and true assessing true needs on the ground.
Yeah.
Just has to be part of the conversation.
Can I make a comment on Kathy's
Yeah, please, Mary.
example? Yeah, so I think it's not as hard as it used to be to engage people on Route 1.
Yeah.
We had a pretty good turnout from United Community people and their clients last night at a meeting that was trying to set priorities for federal funding in health and human services for the coming year. And we had a lot of people from the mobile home parks, a lot of people from the United Community area. And it was terrific telling, first person lived experience stories.
Yeah.
And one thing I've always wished, I wish this had happened, I wish we'd gotten this equity focus on transportation years ago when we were planning Embark, because it was completely missing and everybody around here knows it. And I don't know, I don't think it's too late since they haven't really started building this thing yet. I mean, they've started tearing down things to build it, but they haven't started building it. If you did a transportation study from a pedestrian equity point of view on Route 1, like you're talking about doing in Centerville, you would find that I think the Embark is going to make the road widening is going to make things more dangerous. Route 1's already one of the main pedestrian kill centers in the county because people are always crossing the street without a light. And the reason for that is that it can be like a half mile between lights. And we just need more crossings. And we need the crossings near the bus stops. And we need more pedestrian safety on Route 1. And it's being enlarged and planned as a bigger throughway. And I would love to see some people coming in. And I think you can gather the people here now organized to talk about it. I can't do it all by myself. I've tried and I can't, but I think a group of people could do this and look at that here. So I hope you're not, I've heard people say that this equity policy level thing is just going forward. It's not going to apply to anything that's already approved. And I think that's a big mistake. I think there's a very expensive $1 billion project here that's approved, and to build that without looking at transportation equity and specifically and pedestrian safety I think it's inexcusable. I think it just has to happen. So I hope you can push back and see if we can retrofit some things that aren't even being built yet.
Well, and to that point, is the county working at all with like opportunity neighborhoods? And to Mary's point, the people who are already engaged with these communities, because they are trusted sources. And that way, because if Dan Stork puts it in his newsletter, well, odds are it's not even in the right language and they're not going to see it. So that is sort of maybe that's a way that there could be outreach to those communities.
Just I can tell you what a shift we've been doing in the last couple of years is working close. We've established a closer partnership with NCS, who is the people involved with the opportunity neighborhoods who run all of that. And we've been working, we've established a closer relationship over the last few years to, because they are the ones that have the connections on the ground in the community. And so they've helped us a lot, not only with translation, but like understanding who we need to talk to, how to do so, and often they host many of the conversations. But point taken, Kathy, the Opportunity Neighborhoods program is we're connected to it through our partners in NCS. So
Okay, that's wonderful. And I see our friend Elaine is maybe lives in Kingstown. I will tell you that as a person on the Route 1 corridor, I am so jealous of the Kingstown like congregation area they have. I take my daughters over there. We order pizza, then we hang out in the common area. We see people. I think one night we heard 7 different languages walk by. People are walking their dogs. Then we have Sweet Frog. And we could, if that were my community, I could meet other people that live near me, but there's nothing like that on the Richmond Highway corridor. Is there any plan? Like, how can I give feedback on that? Would I go to the parks session of this? Because that to me is an equity issue that we don't have that. Like in Tyson's, they have that area they can all go. There's just nothing like that.
Yeah, I think it's a partnership between probably the us, the equity people, as well as parks. I mean, they're really the ones. And Mary Cortina, maybe you're more of an expert on the park stuff than I am, but parks has been gone through this strategic planning effort with the process strategy, where they've really zeroed in on access to parks, and access being not just being able to, I mean, very importantly, being able to walk to a park, but also like where have our resources been invested historically? Where do we need to invest them in the future? Here are the areas that need more parks. They've really begun digging into that with their strategic plan. So, so point taken, Kathy. And I'm gonna Leah, who's taking notes. We'll pass that on to parks as it came up as part of our meeting, but also in the parks meeting, it's worth if you're available to attend one of those meetings, if they can get it several ways, they are able to talk about the process strategy more fluently than I am, honestly. But good point. And parks, I think, has really shifted, has embedded a lot of equity into their planning for the future at the moment.
Okay, that's good, because
Yeah.
I'm thinking it needs to be somewhere like the Mount Vernon Plaza, which has retail, not like Mount Vernon Woods. I'm not going to take a group of my friends and go into a skate park like that. They might say, "Oh, we're giving you the skate park." I'm like, I'm 60. I'm not getting on a skateboard. So that's great, but not happening. So just a place where you can, hey, let's meet up for coffee, and then you spill out and you see. We have a lovely local neighborhood coffee shop, and every time I go there, it's super tiny. Maybe has 4 tables. I see at least 3 people I know. So I would love to have something where we can build community, and Mount Vernon Plaza is just an idea. So I'll go to that meeting too and bother them.
I encourage it. Oh wait, we're Mary.
Can I have a
go ahead,
comment
Mary.
on that? Yeah, what's happening on Route 1 too is getting even worse to have places, because they're tearing down buildings all along. I think they're VDOT or FCDOT plans on tearing down 5 more buildings on the northern end of Route 1. And sometimes when the buildings get torn down, some local people set up a little flea market or something. And they did that down near Audubon. And I don't know, somebody complained and they chased them out and they put up a fence around it. VDOT did, and now they're putting up fences, I guess, to keep people out of these little rubble lots. But it seems that during the transition, something could be done along the highway there that would maybe enhance the community a little more than make it look worse. That's a transportation issue, and I know it's VDOT in some cases.
I was just looking up the transportation meeting. The transportation meeting is Monday, 7 to 8 p.m. next Monday, the 17th. No, 14th. But again,
So
any comments we receive related to other topics, we will certainly be passing on to other groups.
Well, as a high-level policy, I'd certainly encourage you to put in, a policy, a high-level policy for getting, input and communication from people in a really serious way of doing that. I think NCS has been doing a good job, but they still don't quite hit everybody. They're pretty good. I encourage you to work through them, but there's also some activist organizations, and county always tends to ignore them in all regards, and sometimes they are doing things that NCS isn't even up to speed on. So that it would be good to have some kind of contact with that. And I think just that one thing, if there was any one thing you could do to improve equity, it would be that, looking at things from the point of view of people from different cultures and income levels.
Thank you, Mary, for that.
I have one other question.
Yeah,
so is there, I know we're getting ready to redo the boundaries and the school renovation queue. Is out of this process, let's say there's a list of 100 things that need to happen. Are there going to be, what's the prioritization, I'm going to say renovation queue, look like for this process? Are you going to start with like the Route 1 corridor, which has historically been left out of a lot of the planning? Or is it like on a need basis, a money basis? What does that look like?
Well, the policy plan process is, the outcome of this process is not necessarily, and now we're going to build a fire station in these two places because we need fire stations there. That's often, the policy plan is more of a, these places, the data tells us, there's a high number of residents. The policy plan would say, consider the data when placing bus stops, and maybe take into account the data that shows us whether people have access to a car or not. For example, like that's sort of a policy level thing. And then, for example, when DOT would be doing an area plan study or something, then they would see that policy and say, we need to activate that policy in this area. The data shows us that even though we are supposed to place bus stops, like, I'm making up some of these numbers, but like every half mile, but our data shows that in this particular area, there's a high number of residents without cars. And so maybe we need to put more bus stops in this area. And so with the policy plan process, we are working on setting a framework to implement the One Fairfax policy and implement the strategic plan by setting a framework within which we as staff then use and work. And so I don't know that there's not necessarily a queue of projects that results out of a policy plan update. That sort of thing does sometimes come from, for example, area plans or other planning processes, I suppose. Mary, I saw your question, Cortina. Is there a policy in the transportation section that the bus stops need to be near intersections, crosswalks for equity as well as safety for everyone? I cannot tell you off of the top of my head if there is an existing policy that is related to that, but it is certainly something for discussion as part of this process. Right. Thank you, Mary. I see your chat. The point is that the public investment needs to be in these opportunity areas. Right. I mean, that's when we talk about access to opportunity, that's what we're trying to focus on. Is that, where does the public investment need to be, and where does it need to be now? Hi, Mary.
Hey, I figured I would just jump in there.
Yeah.
I think these are wonderful points that are made. And with respect to the CIP, the Capital Improvement Program,
Yeah.
that is where we list our public investment. And many times a department might say, well, I need a XYZ, need to cover a certain service area. But the service area may be, let's say there's something in Lorton that's, not necessarily accessible. And so they need to look at where it can serve the people, not just from access to cars, but access to where they live. And these opportunity areas, they don't have a lot of development investment. And so, what's the public responsibility for trying to add amenities or bring it up to a level that is more just with the rest of the county? Because if we wait for development, it may not happen for a decade or more. There's a stretch in Annandale where we have 4 different sidewalk surfaces within 20 yards. It starts out with concrete, then it goes to a little bit of brick that was part of some renovation years ago that the county did. Then it goes to gravel, and then it goes to asphalt. It has a pole, utility pole in the middle of the sidewalk and a storm drain. And people are expected to somehow get around on these streets, and you can't wait until those property owners get together and then renovate. So anyway, I will get out of the conversation, but I really appreciate what I've heard today. Thank you.
Thanks, Mary.
So at that point, will it be Dan Stork, Rodney Lusk, and Penny Gross duking it out, trying to get the how does because
Jimenez, not Penny Gross anymore.
Oh, that's right. You're right. Correct. Will it be them trying to figure out how to do this? So you guys are just collecting the data and say, here's the need. What's that look like?
Well, I mean, we put that into action when we're doing, our little corner of the world, right, is land use and development. There's a big part of the county that are other things, like economic development. There's big human services. There's lots of big stuff. Our little corner of the world is land use, and it's not always just an either or, right? And it's true that the county maybe doesn't have all of the resources to solve all of the problems through all of the county tomorrow, but it is, part of the discussion. I mean, the discussion has to be had, and we, as staff, the policy plan is the way that we have that discussion with the board and with the community, and that guides us for that discussion. And so, I don't necessarily have a right answer for you about that, but it's but it's part of how the government works. We're always there's a limited amount of resources, and we have to figure out where to direct them. I can tell you, as part of the CIP process, they also are increasingly working on how to incorporate the One Fairfax policy, into their work increasingly. And so, it's part of the work of government is prioritizing the resources and you know, our goal is to as for our staff, the policy plan, you know, sets the guidance for our staff, and so that's where our focus is at the moment. Go ahead, Mary. I don't remember which
Yeah,
Mary, but yeah.
Mary Payton. Yeah,
Thanks, Mary.
I finally figured out that when I started hearing the policy plan was being revised, I didn't even know there was a policy plan behind the map plans. So I had to figure out why it was important to put energy into helping this revision. And I talked to some of the planners that I knew from working on the regional and local planning processes. And they said, yes, in fact, they do often look to the policy plan when they're trying to figure something out about how a development should be allowed, or how to make a decision about something. They often refer to this policy plan. So I thought, well, that's good. That's worth having. That's worth working on. I tell you, though, it is really hard to interest any of the community people to work on a policy plan, because they don't, this is so far removed from their daily activities. If something's not going to happen within the next couple months, they just can't even think about it. So how to present that and how to get input on it for something that they're not going to see any results out of, maybe never, in terms of being able to connect it in their mind to what gets developed, is really hard. But maybe your communication folks can work on that a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, Mary, that really is the challenge of our work. I mean, because often our work doesn't manifest itself for 10, 20, sometimes even longer years. And so that it really is the challenge. And so, you know, we do our best to talk to people as much as we can. And then, you know, we also try to use what the data tells us and what we know from experience, what we've heard from people. And we, you know, do our best to take a step forward as we move forward. And so, point taken, Mary. It's not easy, and I appreciate your effort and being part of it, because you know, policy work is very high level and it's very far removed from, you know, day-to-day concerns, honestly. And so, I appreciate that. With that, I appreciate everyone for joining us today. I encourage you to you know, join what meetings you can. You can always contact one of us. We're happy to pass on comments and thoughts. We'll pass on things that we've heard today, that we've talked about today. We have another meeting that will be the exact same presentation. Our next equity presentation will be at night. Thanks, Leah. Oh, October 21st. And so we intend to have the exact same presentation again, and then continuing discussion. And then here's a list for all the other topics. And of course, you can get in touch with us anytime. We're open and hope to continue this conversation moving forward. So
is a recording of this meeting and the slides available online?
Not yet, but they will be. Give us a day or so to get it up. It takes a little bit to render the video, but it will be. Give us a day or so to get it up.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thanks, Mary.
Okay, bye.
Okay, thank you, everyone. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.